Hello everyone, Phil Snyder with GunClassUtah.com. Hey, today I want to do my last video on my 2024 playlist refresher course. And today's topic is going to be on range rules and range safety. So first of all, when you go into a gun range, if you've been there for the first time, it's going to be very loud, okay? You're going to walk into that door and you're going to hear these loud gunshots. And so, a lot of people that aren't aware of that, they'll, jump when they hear that. So you want to make sure that you have eye and ear protection before you enter the range. You also want to make sure that you've read the range safety rules. They'll typically post those up there. I know that they are the basic range safety rules, but they will also talk about, for example, no pregnancies, no pregnant women allowed on the range for obvious reasons, I suppose. The range is typically, when you visit it, they are probably going to have you sign a safety waiver to some degree. If you've got a firearms instructor you're going with, they will probably have you sign their own waiver. I know that I do. It's a covenant not to sue and release of liability. Being as careful as you are on the range, there's always a danger, a risk of being harmed, whether that's, you're gripping the pistol wrong and you get injured, your finger injured, or, you're not following safety rules, or somebody else is not following the safety rules that's next to you. A number of those situations can occur. But you always want to follow the rules of gun safety. You never have the muzzle of the gun pointed in an unsafe direction. And on a gun range, the only direction is towards the target, like this, downrange. You don't want to point it up. Have you ever been to a gun range and looked up at the ceiling? There's thousands or hundreds of holes in the ceiling where people are pointing unsafe and the gun goes off and there's bullet holes. It's not safe to point down here at the gun bench. It's not safe to point this. This is the most dangerous, pointing left and pointing right. The most dangerous way is left. 90% of shooters are right-handed shooters. And so when they, pull their slide back when they're right-handed, this is a forward-facing camera, so it's going to show the opposite direction, but they tend to turn that gun when they're doing this. And if they're, on the other hand, they tend to go this way. There was a woman on the gun range recently. She was shooting, and there was a man with his teenage son shooting 3 bays over, and he was unloading his gun to go home for the day, and he accidentally discharged the gun, and the bullet went through 3 lanes of sheetrock, and the bullet lodged in this woman's leg, and she needed to have that bullet removed. So you just need to be careful of that left and that right. I know what tends to help me sometimes, if you're tending to do that, maybe you could just cant at an angle a little bit to keep that gun down range. But you always want to point in a safe direction. Muzzle never should be pointed at anything you're not willing to destroy, you cannot afford to replace. And it's only acceptable downrange. You never want to have your finger on the trigger until your sights are on target and you made the mental decision to fire. Then you can come on the trigger. You always want to assume guns are loaded and don't load the guns until you're ready to use. Here's another really important safety rule. You always want to pack and unpack your gun from the gun bench here. So if you come to the range, put your gun bag or your gun case down at the table, remove the gun and the magazines and get your ammo out of your bag, whatever you need. And then you put that bag and stow it aside. Same thing, reverse order. When you go to leave for the day, don't take your gun and walk away back here where these seats are and put that away. If they see you doing that on the cameras, or if a range safety officer sees you doing that, they're probably going to come down there and yell at you. And if you've done it more than once, they might tell you can't come back to the range. So always pack and unpack from the bench. Usually on a lot of lanes of the gun ranges, there is a safety line, like a yellow or a red safety line that's a foot or two back from the bench, and they want you in front of that safety line. for good reasons. From the safety line forward, this is bulletproof material. A lot of gun ranges will have either Kevlar material or they'll have bricks or something like that. But if you're stepping behind here with a gun, that's sheetrock. And that's how that lady was shot in the leg, as that this guy had the gun back behind the gun bench and he was unloading it and he had it this way, and that happened. So odds speaking, the safest lane on a gun range, because 90% of the shooters are right-handed shooters, and right-handed shooters tend to point that gun left, your safest lane is going to be on the far right lane, oddly speaking, for that reason. Only 1 out of 10 left-handed shooters, only 1 out of 10 are going to point it the other direction. So some ranges are very safe. Always look for a range that has a range safety officer on staff. If they don't have a range safety officer, they rely on cameras. And so as responsible gun owners, we ourselves as shooters visiting the range want to also be on the lookout for things that are unsafe. Who can call a ceasefire? Anybody on the range can call a ceasefire. You can. If you see something unsafe or if you need to shut the range down, call ceasefire, lane cold. That will often be called when maybe range safety officers do that because they need to shut the range down. Maybe there's a broken target pulley or something like that, or somebody's dropped something downrange. You don't want to pick up anything that you've dropped on a range going ahead of that bench until you've called a ceasefire. A lot of ranges will have those little squeegees, and if you can reach out there and pull something in, that would be okay. So we talked about ceasefires, lane cold, and if you hear that, they want you to empty your gun, lock your slide back. When your gun's empty, set the gun down on the bench and step out of the bay until the range safety officer's clear that the range is safe again. And then when they say open range, or you might hear hot range or resume fire, that means that they're done and you can resume fire again. The lane is clear and safe to go back. Eye and ear protection is mandatory on the gun ranges. They have earplugs. I myself like these noise canceling headsets. They're electronic. They run by a couple of batteries. They've got a volume knob here. You turn these on and you put them on, and you could adjust these by pulling them down or cinching them back up. I like those because they cancel out the loud gunshot noises and they amplify the instructor's voice or somebody's voice so people can hear what they're saying. But you always want to put some shatterproof eye protection on first, and then it's easier to put these earmuffs on. If you're really sensitive to noise, gunshots, you could also put some earplugs. You see those little 50-cent earplugs? You can push those in and then put those earmuffs over, and it's going to make that a lot less noise. Always be aware when you're on the range of what other shooters are doing. You want to be aware of your surroundings. As you walk into the gun range, is anybody alone? There have been range suicides, and somebody will come in oftentimes and rent a gun and commit suicide, and that's happened to some local ranges here. If you see anything unsafe at all, go report it to the desk or the range safety officer so they can handle something like that. The only safe place for a gun to be out on a range is either in the holster, at the low ready, or on the target shooting. If you're not doing any of those, then that gun should be in its holster or its gun case. When you get done shooting for the day, you want to make sure that you wash and dry your hands. Gunpowder will get all the way up here on your forearms if you've been shooting a lot. So just wash, change your clothes, because there's going to be gunpowder. That stuff can be quite irritating to the eyes if you itch your eyes when you've got gunpowder on your hands and that hasn't been washed off. So let's just have a fun experience at the gun range. Just make sure that we watch each other and in a nice way, point out if somebody's being unsafe with a gun that we might be shooting with. We just want to make sure that we follow the gun safety rules at all times and be mindful of where our muzzles are pointed. And if you do all these things, then your experience at the gun range should be very good and we shouldn't have any problems. Outdoor ranges are a little bit more risky because you don't have barriers covering you on the left and to the right. I use outdoor ranges with students, but I typically don't do that on the first time. Usually I'll do an indoor range on the first time, and then on the second day in our pistol course, we're drawing from the holster and we're moving and things like that. And so we need to make sure that you're safe on the range before we go on to any additional days beyond day one of training. Sometimes you'll see range flags on range. That just indicates that the lane's hot, that the firearms range is in use. You might see those. I don't see them too often, but occasionally once in a while. When you get done shooting on the range, just tell yourself practice is over. Go home and clean your gun, oil it according to your owner's manual's recommendation and specifications. Put yourself some good defensive ammo in there and you're good to go until the next practice. Thanks for watching.